Hi everyone, this is Faye from Feisworld Media, and I've been wanting to record this video for some time now. I'm finally sitting down here with my good friend, Jorge Fuentes, and today we're here to talk about Zoom and Zoom webinars, specifically how we host and manage them and the relationship we have built over the years. So you already know who I am, and Jorge, do you mind briefly introducing yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jorge Fuentes. I live in Massachusetts, and I'm a geotechnical engineer by trade. But I love this moderation. I've been helping a lot of clients across the states with actually across the world, different time zones and moderating their webinars recently. So I'm doing a nice passion and loving it.
Yeah, this is so cool. And I love the fact that Jorge is a friend who's watched a lot of my videos on YouTube and now working directly with my clients. So we're going to go into a fast-paced, a few questions that might actually help you along the way as well. Maybe this is a career you're considering or something you might want to pick up for your organization. The first one is, Jorge, when it comes to preparing for a webinar, what are some of the things that comes to mind, that surprises that might happen before a webinar?
Sure, that's a great question, Faye. So I think the most important thing is to have a clear communication with the entire team. I know everybody's in time crunch and we want to run, but it's one of the key elements to have a smooth session is to know who are your presenters, your speakers, what kind of questions and topics they're going to address. So ideally, I'd like to set up a good hour before our meeting, actual webinar, to set up a good monologue or come up with a good schedule, come up with the topics and have clear transitions. I'm typically moderating behind the scenes, all the transitions in content presentation. The earlier we can have that, the better, and have everybody obviously prepare and have a rehearsal hour or so before the event.
Yeah, this is super important to show up to the live session, I would say a minimum of 30 minutes beforehand. And so that you can check audio and video, and especially the slides and presentations that you're
Totally.
using.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you always request those PDFs and slides ahead of time, just in case that if the presenter suddenly is unable to access his or her slides, and that we can, as moderators, to use ours as backup. Now, during the session, you think about like energy wise, like bring that positive energy to your session. So what do you think about it? And what are some of the cues you can give during the session to really engage with everyone?
Sure. Yeah. Get to know your speakers, right? Even if it's out of your expertise topic, read about them, get to know them, watch a couple of their past webinars, right? Get to know how they interact and everything, and just get the best and most energy out of them. I think that's key.
Yeah.
Get to know your audience and obviously your team.
So cool. And another question that often comes up is Q&A. So questions and answers may come up during the session. As a moderator, what do you think about what are some of the questions you would ask to an organizer in order to choose the right questions for the speakers?
That's super critical. Any changes on case by case scenario. The live questions are very tricky because you don't know what's appropriate, what's adequate to bring live. Sometimes it's sensitivity information or that could be potentially not the right question. So that's a little more difficult. And I rely a lot in the rest of the team to make the right selection, right? If I feel comfortable or if it's something that has vetted before the event, I will be able to recognize what type of questions I could bring up. But most of the time, I also will rely on the rest of the team. And that's okay. Don't be afraid as a moderator to ask for that help because it's not all you to determine what's an okay or not okay question to bring up.
Cool. Actually, do you want to ask me a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
As well? Anything that comes to mind?
I think the first thing is what motivated you to do this?
You know, the funny thing is, I should mention that the reason why I did so many Zoom and Zoom webinar videos is because of Jorge. So I've been following Jorge, who is an incredible Zumba instructor, for a couple of years before the pandemic hit. That was a natural part of my everyday life, to be honest, like dancing every day. And suddenly we were brought offline. And you were the reason why I uploaded my very first Zoom video, how to teach Zumba on Zoom, figuring out audio and video issues. Now, that video took off with 10, 30,000, now probably well over 100,000 views. I was then discovered by companies, at first by fitness instructors all over the world. It was incredible. But then by companies who are also bringing their business sessions online. I realized it felt like an incredible achievement that people were so worried about how to actually do this. And it was very anxiety inducing. And by being there, I think the same that I can see the comfort, the level of comfort you've brought to a lot of these organizations. and be able to connect their knowledge and information with their audience is just incredible. So that's very fulfilling.
That's great. As far as running a live webinar, what has been one of the biggest challenge that you have faced, and how you address it and solve it?
Yeah. So sometimes there are a few things that could come up. So one is the anxiety, for example, of the technology not working. Now, we both live on the northeast side of the United States. And in the past few years, just the strong wind, rains, and very brutal weathers that we have experienced, lots of snowstorms, there's a good chance that our Wi-Fi or electricity could go out. So if you're working from a laptop or like a laptop computer or a desktop computer like the one I have, it can get pretty risky, to be honest. So what I've decided to do is during especially a lot of these webinars I manage, I feel like 3,000 people, I always have my mobile phone running. Worst case scenario, it's fully charged, has a 4G or 5G network, depending on where you are, and I can literally bounce back to the session. That also means I will write down my Zoom webinar, meeting ID, password, all that information. I'll have that ready, printed out old school style, and I'll communicate this plan with my counterparts, with other people who are working in the background of the webinar session, working in operations. So they know that this is the setup I have. With that said, we also do all our documentations, Q&As, questions via Google Doc. So if all things fail, somebody is able to understand this and somebody can come, basically show up, start sharing video, and start moderating the session for me, continuing from where I left off.
So it all comes back down to good planning, good communication with your team ahead of the time to run a smooth event, for sure.
Yeah. And there's another thing that has come up. We're jokingly saying that when I moderate for a lot of these tier 1 guests, they sometimes show up earlier, but they may not show up 30 minutes before the session, sometimes 5-10 minutes. Now, I had someone who showed up 5 minutes after the session has completely kicked off, and we already opened up the session. And at the beginning, I didn't know what else to say, but just remember to have a natural conversation. These things could happen. Somebody's like fumbling through the slides. That not that you need to share something super personal or private with your personal life, but you could have a book ready. For example, I have a lot of authors that I love. Sometimes I read a little paragraph from the book, and I just prepare something for just a few minutes to bridge the gap. Another thing I should also mention that when the sessions run super long, I have done these sessions for 4 to 5 hours, and then you have to sometimes bake in some restroom breaks as well. You have to communicate that at that time. Sometimes I have a slide ready, but those are the things that could come up that can become like a little bit challenging at times.
Okay.
So here's a challenge that I have faced in the past. Sometimes you're moderating sessions and the speakers are very engaging. They're smiling, you're engaging with them. And at times you might be facing someone who is just very stone-faced, who's not very engaged or like even seem to be bored by the topics. What do you do? How do you let them affect your energy level too?
No, I think that's one of our biggest challenges, right? We need to maintain that positive energy, try to transmit it to our audience, and obviously the most important ones, the speakers. If that's the case, I try to bring animated questions in a way that kind of, by second hand, brings them up back into the goal. Just transmit that energy. But sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes people just have very mixed emotions, be nothing to do with the session or the moderator. Continue the session with a smile on your face, engage, and sometimes they would really just switch. And that's what we do as professionals. So if you have any questions and things that you have learned in the past, please leave them as comments below. We love to really moderate or follow the conversation thread to see what we can learn from you guys and make it a two-way street. So thank you so much for watching.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
See you
Awesome.
next
Thank you all.